for you, Suzanne.
Well, hi, everybody. Welcome. Thank you for taking the time to join us this afternoon for our quick kind of overview of what's happening at Presley Ridge, what's been going on with strategic planning, and what we see as the future for the organization. We're really happy to have everyone today to be able to take this time to share a little bit about the organization and what we see as our next steps. This is an exciting year for us because it is actually Presley Ridge's 190th anniversary, if you can believe that. So we have been providing services to kids and families for 190 years and really helping those in our community who face significant challenges. So we're extremely proud of that, and we're happy to be here and happy to be able to share how we plan to continue to do that in the future. I do want to take this time to just acknowledge the fact that we do have a number of board members on the call, as well as current ones and former ones. So thank you for joining us. If you've helped us in the past, continue to move Presley Ridge forward, we appreciate that. And we appreciate all the efforts of the board in this recent process that we have gone through to create this new strategic plan. The other piece of exciting news to share is I want to introduce Tisha Germany, who you see on the screen with me. Tisha is the Vice President of KBK Enterprises and has been a longstanding board member with Presley Ridge, and she is our new board chair. So she is the one who is, beneficial and extremely helpful in helping us move the strategic plan forward. She's the leader of the board, and she is our partner in helping us be successful in the community. So let me introduce Tisha to you, and she can share a little bit about her experience with Presley Ridge.
Thank you, Suzanne, and welcome everyone. This afternoon. Hopefully we can keep your attention for the next 30 minutes, as Suzanne and I would like to do. We'll make this short and sweet, but we appreciate everyone taking time out of their day to spend with us and to hear about the great things that are happening at Presley Ridge. And I'm really excited to be leading the organization at this time. I think this is a very exciting time. And the changes and the growth that's happening at Presley Ridge. I've been on the board since 2013 and have served in various positions in the executive committee at the board, and also have been instrumental in helping with the new school that I hope that everyone has been able to see or been a part of for the children with autism and deaf. And so that's just, we hope, a springboard to a lot of new changes and growth that we are embarking on here at Presley Ridge. One of the things we want to talk about today is the new strategic plan. We were spent 2021 going through a new strategic plan. So it was a challenge in the middle of COVID with all of us meeting through Zoom. I think we're all used to it now, getting through this process. But we think we have a great new plan that'll carry us through 2024 and give us some real insight on how we see the organization moving forward. That strategic plan started with the Innovation Committee and being able to meet within that committee to report back to the board. And Suzanne and her team had stakeholder meetings and SWOT analysis and surveys to really help set our goals for what we believe should happen in the next 2 years. And from that, we were able to find what our priorities are and how we can be consistent in the approach with the board and what our direction should really be. So we think that we were able to come through with a process and a plan that is executable, and we're excited to move forward. So I'll leave Suzanne to talk a little bit more in detail about that plan.
Thank you, Tisha. So as Tisha mentioned, the strategic plan involved a lot of different people in the community, a lot of different stakeholders, surveying, looking at kind of the national trends that we see across social services and in the communities in which we serve. And all that information was gathered to come up with really 5 key areas to move the organization forward over the next 3 to 5 years. The first area that is part of the strategic plan, and it's really the pillar of the plan because we see it thread throughout the other pillars in the strategic plan, but it is racial equity. And Presley Ridge chose racial equity in our work with racial equity because we've been seeing the effects, honestly, of racism across our communities and with our kids and families. And when we think about racial equity, what we're talking about within the organization is the way in which we're defining our work on racial equity is really about thinking of racial equity as one part of racial justice. And how we include in our work ways in which to address the root cause of inequities, not just their manifestation. So looking at the elimination of policies, practices, attitudes, cultural messages that reinforce kind of differential outcomes and ways to eliminate them. And so as our work goes with racial equity for the kids and families that we're serving, a lot of what we're looking at is our data in the organization and our outcomes for kids and families. And a big step in our racial equity work is just disaggregating the data that we have by race to look to see where do we see disparities, where do we see challenges that children of color face that we are serving, and how do we address those going forward. The other piece in the outcomes work that we're doing is partnering with a number of our community partners, stakeholders, other institutions such as education, the Department of Human Services, our court systems, and really looking to explore, what are the things that have occurred throughout a child and family's life that have really created challenges for them as part of racial injustice, and how do we work with our partners to change policies within their systems to make things more fair and equitable for all kids, all families. We're also looking to address diversity within the organization. Presley Ridge does a pretty good job of matching our client base to our employee base, and that we're able to attract a number of staff into our organization that match the race of the children and families that we're serving. But where we don't do such a good job is as we start to look at our leadership positions, our supervisory positions and management positions across the organization. And so we have a real concentrated effort to recruit for diversity and to increase and help people through their career path so that we have diversity amongst our leadership ranks. And there's some really specific steps that we're taking to do that across the organization and within our workforce. Because we're here to serve all people, we should have a diverse workforce, a diverse leadership team. We want that diversity of thinking and thought processes because we feel like that makes us a better organization all the way around. And we're really excited about that work in the future. We also, want to make sure that we are increasing our lobbying and advocacy efforts as we start to look at barriers to employment, and as we start to look at ways in which those barriers to employment disproportionately affect our racially diverse candidates. And so how do we engage government? How do we engage our lobbying efforts to really address those issues so that we can get more people into the workforce, ensure that they have the same opportunities as other people in the organization, and to advance their careers with Presley Ridge. So lots of work there around racial equity, and more to share in the future that I hope everybody will be really excited about. Our goal here is to absolutely ensure that everyone is treated fairly and equitably within this organization, and that our community partners also embrace the change that needs to happen when it comes to policies and practices to ensure there is equity. As I mentioned, this pillar kind of runs throughout, and I touched on workforce and leadership development and how we want to recruit a diverse workforce at Presley Ridge. We all know we are facing challenges with workforce. It doesn't matter what industry in which you operate. And so how do we make Presley Ridge, a place that is, people are excited to come and do this work. They're excited about the contribution that they can make. They have voice and access and ownership in the organization, and that they're really excited to do the work for kids and families in all of our communities. And so we're really looking at comprehensive career and leadership development within the organization, and how do we kind of increase those within our levels of service at Presley Ridge. How do we increase their skill sets? How do we make sure there are career opportunities for them and advancement opportunities and ways in which to develop their skill sets in the future? And we're really looking at ways to bring in leadership development to the organization, as well as ensure their kind of clinical skill set is increased. We're seeing lots of complexity with kids and families in the organization. We all know COVID has had extreme effects on our communities, on us ourselves. And we also know that mental health is playing a critical role in the effects of COVID and how people are handling the stress of COVID and even the after effects of COVID. And we're not only going to see it now, but we're going to see it in the years to come. And so how do we ensure that we are prepared to not only serve those in our communities, but also take care of ourselves? And so part of our workforce and leadership development piece is around, making sure that we have the right staff with the right skills, that we're offering career and leadership development opportunities, that we are partnering with our Black colleges and universities, that we are reaching out to make sure that people know that we want a diverse workforce. And there's lots of different action items in there, but that's our ultimate goal, is to be able to create a workforce that meets the needs of our community, and to have lots of diversity within the organization. I mentioned the complexity of kids and families and what we're seeing, not just with COVID, but prior to COVID, and the challenges that we face with mental health, and serving those in our communities that are facing, some real struggles in their life. And so our third area is around clinical mastery. And when we talk about clinical mastery, we're talking about kind of making sure that we have the highest level of clinical knowledge to address treatment issues and challenges that kids and families face. And how do we ensure that we have kind of this unified model of care across all of the states in which Pressley Ridge provides services? Obviously, we're headquartered here in Pittsburgh. Our largest base of children and families is in Pennsylvania, but we have 5 other states in which we provide services, and we want to make sure that everyone has the necessary skill sets to address the challenges and feels competent in the work that they do. We also want to stay on top of our evidence-based practices. It's really important for us to, learn and to grow in our work. We talk a lot about trauma-informed care, and that was a term that you wouldn't have heard 20 years ago. And so how do we continue to take the best practice of research, the best practice of clinical interventions, the best of our evidence-based practices, and train our staff and supervise to that, so that we can continue to use the best interventions to serve kids and families for the future and give them the best possible outcomes of success. And so we're looking at a number of different analytics around the best models to use for various challenges that kids and families face, and then incorporating those into our supervision, as well as our training and our leadership development. And we're also looking at race-based trauma as part of that racial equity goal, and making sure that when we are doing clinical supervision with our staff that are working with African American children or other children of color, looking at that race-based trauma and how that has impacted them in their life. So incorporating all of that into our clinical practices. The last 2 areas always kind of, joke around a little bit, aren't all that sexy to talk about as part of a strategic plan, but they're extremely important. Financial health is the 4th area of the strategic plan, and we have to be financially healthy because we want to continue the mission of this organization. So it's about not only being good stewards of the funds that we have, but also ensuring the financial viability of the organization going forward, and looking at various ways to bring in diverse sources of revenue, making sure that we can grow our fundraising and development efforts to support things that are not funded through our government contracts. Most of you know we are a government contracted organization, so we have contracts with the Department of Human Services, with probation, with education, a number of different funders that fund the interventions and the practices that we do with children and families. But what goes unfunded are things like the new school building that Tisha was talking about, the project in which she led that was a $12 million project to build a new school for children and families, for kids to be educated, children that have autism and children that are deaf, in a space that meets their sensory needs. There's no other school like it. It's beautiful. It is up to date. It's current. It's got the best technology. It's got the best of sensory equipment. And it costs money to do that. It costs us $12 million. And there aren't funds that come from government to pay for that. And so we had to embark on a capital campaign to be able to do that, because we believe our kids and families should have the best of the best to create opportunities for success. And so we're extremely proud of that school, but it's one example of how we have to have community partners, and we have to have people supporting the mission of this organization through donations and contributions. Otherwise, we wouldn't have that service, and we would have kids and families not receiving the care that they need, and we would have children not being able to be successful at life. And that is exactly what we are trying to do in this organization, is help people be successful and to live independently. And that new school is going to allow those kids to have the best chance of achieving their educational success and then going on to have jobs, going on to have a meaningful, purposeful life. And so we're looking to maintain consistent surpluses so that we can take those surpluses and put them right back into kids and families in our programming in this organization. We want to have access to capital that I just mentioned. We have to find ways to keep our buildings and our schools up to date and current with the best possible resources to meet the needs of kids and families. Then the last area is really around business development. And when we talk about business development for Presley Ridge, what we're talking about is being able to prioritize expansion of our services to kids and families where we see gaps in care or where we have expertise that we think can be helpful to kids and families in their communities. So being very intentional about looking at models of expansion of our services where we can have a direct impact to help kids and families be successful. And we're also looking at different models like community-based care models, where there are entities like Presley Ridge that lead an entire effort to change kind of the way in which children's services are administered. And that's a whole new kind of area for Presley Ridge. But it's really about taking an organization like Presley Ridge, making it a lead agency, and allowing Presley Ridge to manage other service providers in a system with flexible funds to be able to meet their needs differently and to be able to have children and families seamlessly move throughout that system, but managed by a provider like Presley Ridge, not the Department of Human Services. So it's a very interesting model. We've seen some successes across the United States with it, and we'd like to be a part of that to see if we can actually bring about systems change. And then, of course, taking our programs and services that show the best outcomes and replicating them in other areas of our existing states or in new states, because our mission is to do whatever it takes to create success for children and families, and that means anywhere. And so we want to make sure we're available to do that and to offer up what we see as the best practices to help them be successful. So I'll stop there and I'll turn it back over to Tisha for a second and see if she has any other comments. That was a really quick overview of the strategic plan. We have sent it out. It's available to the public. It's on the website. So please, there's a lot of detail in there. You're just getting the highlights today.
Thank you, Susanne. And also thank you for your leadership to help us to get through not only the strategic plan, but also through the COVID period, which has definitely been challenging, not only to keep the organization afloat, but to take on new challenges. This definitely takes someone special to be able to do that. So on behalf of the board, we want to thank you. The strategic plan does have wide board support. Everyone has been involved and has been hearing about each step as we've gone through it. And now we're at the point where we now get a chance to hear about updates on this strategic plan on a regular basis. So we are all willing to roll up our sleeves and ready to go to make sure that we're successful. So thank you. Are there any questions?
You can put them in the chat too if you don't feel comfortable just blurting them out. But Tisha and I are here to take any questions you might have, because we know that was a really quick overview of an extensive process. And it's just the beginning of our work. So now that we've defined our work, now it's time to, as you mentioned, roll up our sleeves and dig in and get busy. Any questions? Ron, any questions in the chat?
Okay. You feel free to turn your cameras back on.
Yeah. I'll just say this as people are turning their cameras back on, but one of the things that we have been talking about is just Presley Ridge's being able to communicate our message pretty clearly to folks. And so we want to make sure that we are pushing out some communication plans, doing things like this Insider series, but also doing other types of communication to make sure that we get the message out about, our work in the community and our commitment to our communities. There was a question I think that popped up about any new plans for the Marshall Avenue campus. So it's good timing. So we built a brand new school for children with autism and children that are deaf, but we also have an existing school on that campus that serves kids in the community that need more support than a regular public school can provide to them. And we have some houses for children with intellectual challenges, and both of those need updated. The first project on the list is the day school, the school that serves children with emotional and behavioral challenges that can't be met in public school. And so obviously, if you were a teacher coming into the new school for autism, you're excited, right? But when you drive by that new school for autism and go into that old building that's sitting back there with our other population of kids, you're a little disappointed. So that school, I think, was built in the 60s. I want to say 65 or somewhere right around in there. And it needs updates, and it needs updates to the point where it's probably going to be better just to have a brand new school. So our new plan is to really think through a new capital campaign around building a new school for those kids. And that, again, is going to take a significant investment from our partners, from the community, and from Presley Ridge. And our own foundation, was the one that really kicked off the capital campaign for the School for Autism. So Presley Ridge's foundation, put in $3 million to kick off that campaign, and we're extremely proud of that. And we know we'll get their support for this new school. But again, we need support from others as well. And Tisha, I don't know if you have other comments on that.
No, I think we have to just take some hard looks at the school and make sure, as we're going through the strategic plan and we're thinking about growth, that we include the Marshall Avenue campus in that growth plan.
So there's a question about sharing how much of our revenue comes from, I think, government contracts was and how that doesn't cover the investments necessary to Presley Ridge. So Presley Ridge is about 98% government funded. And so we have about 100 different contracts across all of our states of fund. And that's a great thing. But with government contracts come limitations. And I mentioned some of those limitations earlier. Government contracts support services. So therapies, clinical interventions, programming to help kids and families. What they don't support are things actually like training, staff development, technology, capital projects, any new initiatives, and startup. Believe it or not, when we start a new program for kids and families, Presley Ridge has to, make that investment or, lose money at the beginning because you don't get paid until you actually get a child in service or begin to be able to bill for those services. So all of that is unfunded, for any of our contracts that we have. And that's why we need the support through our fundraising and development efforts, through our foundation partners, through individuals in the community. All of those things are extremely important. We could not have done services and helped kids and families through COVID without technology. And that was extremely important to have technology. And we gave technology to our kids and families. They didn't have it, the majority of them. So through the generosity of donors and foundations, we were able to, get laptops, computers, set up internet access, and be able to provide those services in a time in which the whole world didn't know what to do. So those things are extremely, just necessary for us, and that's why we need our partners.
Susanne and Tisha, hey, how are you?
Good.
This is great, thanks. I've noticed since COVID that it feels like your social media presence has expanded. I really like whoever writes the copy on like the Facebook posts. I assume that's like Ron and his team or Caitlin or Lisa or something. And I've also noticed that there are now more commercials, it feels like, and some billboards. I just wanted to hear the decision behind that, whether you guys have more plans to do more of that, because it's been nice to see a more public face to the organization.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. I think we're getting, more and more sophisticated with that. And I think that part of it was exactly what you just referenced, Chris, which was, kind of getting our message out that we're here to helping people understand who Presley Ridge is. Through the generosity of, one of the companies, we got those billboards donated. And so I think Lamar Advertising was the one that donated those to us, and we were able to, put up Presley Ridge's information for free, so that the people know how to at least, reach us or what we're here to do in our community. And same thing with the social media presence. I mean, everything changes, right? And so with younger generations, everybody's on social media, and we want to make sure that we use all avenues of communication to get our message out. And I think especially during COVID, though, it was important to, help people understand about taking care of yourself, addressing mental health needs, normalizing mental health. It's one of our big platforms is we have to normalize mental health, that it's just as big a part of your health as physical health. They go together. And so taking care of yourself and doing what you need to do, to be mindful of how you address any challenges you might have.
We're looking for all kinds of ways to increase our presence in the community, and that's been a big topic in committee meetings and at the board, about making sure that folks in the community know who Presley Ridge is, that our message gets out clearly and succinctly, and we're able to get support.
Yeah, and I think, sometimes we get ourselves kind of all muddled up by saying we've got 70 different programs and trying to explain those 70 or 80 different programs. We need to stop doing that. I mean, basically, we have a program for you if you need it, but our big message here is that we are here to help, take care of kids and families with significant challenges, and especially address mental health issues, and, help people live their best life, really. It's 12:30. I want to be mindful of everyone's time.
Right.
Tisha mentioned we wanted to keep this exciting. We want you wanting more. So we're not going to bore you. We want you to, take a look at the strategic plan on the website. We want you to ask questions. We want you to reach out to either one of us if you, want to have a phone call or a lunch meeting or whatever. We're here. But this was just the first step in kind of getting our message out about this new strategic plan. So thank you guys for
Thank you.
joining us today and taking your lunch break to be with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good rest of your day.
You as well.
Thank you. Bye-bye.